Hey, what's up YouTube? I am Lauger, back again today to talk to you about the Pathfinder role-playing game. Now, what am I going to talk about today? Well, after the events of Lauger's Fury, I mentioned we had a member leave for a considerable length of time. It came around to me. We had been talking about it for a while, about after this campaign, who wanted to try running one and this and that. I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. You know, how hard can it be? Again, thought I knew everything. Typical first-time real player, first-time GM. Oh yeah, this has got to be easy. Still kind of mad at the previous GM, and thinking I can do better. Well, I found this adventure path I wanted to run. Now, what is an adventure path? An adventure path, or a module. Modules are just shorter versions of adventure paths. Are the same thing, really. They are pre-written adventures created by the company that runs whatever game you're playing. In this case, it's made by Paizo, who makes Pathfinder. Now, the pre-written path has the story, the general story of, okay, this is what this is the overarching connection points. There's usually, in an adventure path, there's multiple books, usually 6. And it's meant to take place over the course of multiple levels. The particular adventure path I was running, I think, was supposed to go to like 17th or 18th level. And depending on what happens either before, after, during, maybe higher. Because there were some plot hooks in there at the end of, oh, well, if you want to continue, or, after the events of, say, book 3, if they want to keep going around here, this is what else they can find before they want to return back where they need to go. Things like that. Okay. So I'm deciding to run this pre-written path, which I thought would help me a lot, because I am not the most creative person in the world. And designing an entire world and a concept and, multiple levels of a story just is not going to be what I can do. I know that. Okay. Now, where did I get myself in trouble? Part of the problem was I didn't read everything close enough. Reread everything is my tip as a GM. Make sure you know what you're talking about and know how you're playing the game. This particular game we had been playing over the internet. Well, it had a puzzle in the very beginning. I could have skipped the puzzle. I could have found a way to make it easier if I had known about a couple features in the way the thing was built, or the way that the app was built that we used. I could have made this easier. I know now. I didn't know then. But it had a puzzle, and it was a word puzzle, and it had tiles, and you were supposed to like move them around in a certain pattern to unlock this box. Well, it's really easy when you're playing in person. You just take a couple pieces of paper, you write out the things, and you put it in the order they tell you it's originally, and they can move them the way you tell them they can do it right there on the table, and it's done. It's fine. It's easy. Well, they had trouble with it, and instead of finding a way to move it along, or asking for something other than exactly what the book said had to have, I think I stalled a little bit on that one, because I was dead set on, okay, book said you can either figure it out by doing so many tries, or they get so many tries, or they get so many skill checks or whatever, and if that doesn't happen, then account for so much time, and then move on. Well, I was trying to really get them to go through with this trapped box, basically, because once you open the box, there were things inside. It started a problem. Okay. Now what? Well, that was part of That was my fault from the beginning. I think I made that more difficult than it needed to be because of how we were doing it. Now, I could do the same thing now, and knowing what I know about how the app works, make it a lot easier. But what else did I screw up? And trust me, this is a long list. I'm sure I didn't include everything. But anyway, where did I screw up? Well, one of the things I wish I would have had or read better is the bestiary. I did not have this book at the time I played the game. Now, why do I wish I had the bestiary? Well, the bestiary, for example, I'm just going to flip it open to the very first entry for an Asmir, which actually ends up being a playable race. I don't know how well you can see the whole stat block there. It has everything you need to know about the character. Now, it tells you everything as a GM that is important. For example, it tells you their armor, their alignment, how they generally act, and things like that. But the thing that I read wrong was it tells you their weapons, their attacks. Now, normally, with a normal player character, you have any modifier from the weapon, whether it's a magic item, things like that. You have if it's a physical attack, you have your strength roll and your base attack. And I'm going to cover more of those in another video when I do an actual character creation video. But where I'm going with this, for example, this Asmir, it says heavy mace -1. Now, I know now that means you roll a 20-sided dice, you take one from it, from your total, and that's their attack roll, and you check it against the character's armor. If you beat the armor, the attack goes through, you roll damage. Well, I wasn't doing it right. The way I was doing it was like you do with a player. So, I read heavy mace -1. I think I was doing a crossbow, which was this particular character had a crossbow, which was +1. Crossbows use dex, not strength. I don't think I knew that at the time, because we didn't really do a lot of range stuff up until then. So, it had a crossbow plus, this character I was fighting had a crossbow +1. All I should have done was roll my attack roll of a d20, add 1, and go from there. Done. No. Again, not knowing dex should be a thing. I rolled my attack roll. I added in strength. I added in base attack. I recalculated, and I think I was rolling like a d20 plus 5 or something, 5 or 6. Something like that. And I killed my party in literally their second combat, because I was doing it wrong, entirely wrong. Now, I hand waved it, which was bad GMing, but I hand waved it because I wanted to keep going with the campaign. I didn't want to admit that I was completely horrible and completely lost. Well, what did I do? I had an NPC that was introduced to them earlier in the adventure, had been following them, and gave them some potions, saved their lives. Okay. Well, that's fine. That's for a first time. But looking back, it was horrible. My players were pissed. They basically, the one guy was so mad about it, he wanted to just lay there and die, have his character lay there and die and move on to the next adventure. And that might have been better, because I was not doing things very, very well. Now, what else did I screw up? A couple of things. Also with the whole not reading everything right. There was a gentleman that they encountered who had information. Well, in his stat block, he was covered in a disease. And if he successfully hit the player, they had a chance at getting diseased. Well, what do? They weren't. This was actually somebody they could get away with not fighting. So it goes along, and they talk their way through it. They don't actually fight the guy. And as they're leaving, I have him tap them on the shoulder. Okay, well he taps them on their shoulder, you know. And I roll for them a hidden, I think I rolled for them a hidden fortitude check to see whether or not they got diseased. Shouldn't have done that, because that was me trying to force this disease onto the players just because it was there. I'll do that later on too, because I wasn't very good at being a GM. Now, how could I do things? Would I do it that way this time? No. They talked their way out of it. He'd be gone. They'd be done, and that'd be the end of it. Now, one of my other problems I had early on was I didn't read everything carefully. Now, the adventure started with them looking for a missing person. It was really how they got going out, looking around town. And everybody they ran into had been a lead. And as they go, they find out that there are multiple missing people throughout town. They're just random missing people. Well, that's fine, except one of their leads, they come across either it was a wizard or a sorcerer, I don't remember which. And he was supposed to have been just a nobody that had started he had spread the rumor that he was responsible for all the disappearances. Well, it went through, and they fought him, and again, I think I almost got him, and I was doing better that time. It just happened to be that he hit with a color spray, which is just a blinding flash of like bright colors and stuff. It dazzles the player. I think I got one of them dazzled. And then it became a one-on-one fight. And he was holding his own. But they subdued him, they got him. Well, upon questioning, and he wouldn't have killed the players. There was a mechanic built into how he acted. That said, if he captured the players, this is what happens. And I was going to go through with all of that. And they would have been rescued and it would have been fine. But he gets captured. Well, he starts telling them that he made up, not that he was just that he made up that he was responsible. No. I tell the players that he made up the whole thing, that there really weren't other people disappearing, and they were only looking for their one missing person. Well, again, I didn't read it right. At the end of the first part of the adventure, they find out there were a ton of missing people, and they're like, I thought you said, and it's just, they caught me not knowing what I was doing again. Okay. Well, those things aside, how else did I screw up? And this is, I'm telling you all these things, hoping that you guys learn from my mistakes and be better GMs if that's what you want to do. I have since learned from all of these things, and I haven't made these same mistakes. But they ended up going out from this town. First of all, they were in a bigger city, and it was referenced in another book that I didn't have more about the city, and I should have gotten that book. It had more about where things were, what, more of the interesting things about the city that I could have used, but I didn't have it, didn't know it. I would get it now if I were to rerun that adventure. But they head out into the harbor of this city, into this structure. I'm trying not to give away too much of the story. But they go into the structure. Well, they're still looking for their missing person, but they've got a new theory as to... Wait, I'm wrong. They'd found their missing person, but they had found an interesting item, and they were sent to go investigate where this interesting item was. Well, they knew when they got out there were some were-rats. Now, what are were-rats? You've heard of a werewolf. Same thing, but instead of turning into a wolf, they turn into a rat. Yeah. Well, that's all fine and well. Knowing there are were-rats, they stocked up on what they needed. But, which I think was silver. But now, what happens? Well, they go ahead, and I'm reading through the entry, and where anythings have three forms. They have their normal human form, they have their full beast form, and they have a mixed form. Well, like, the mixed form is like isn't necessarily a bad form. Sometimes they take that form on their own to defend themselves. Well, they still get all of their normal physical weapon attacks, which, according to their bestiary entry, should have been their primary attack. They also had a bite, and if the players had gotten bitten, there was a chance they could have become a were-rat. Well, instead of going for the primary attack, which did more damage, like I should have, I had these things do mostly bites. Why? Because I really wanted to, because I thought it would be interesting to give one of the players lycanthropy, to make them become a were-rat. Now, that's another thing you should never really do as a GM, and that's try to purposely give your players something to make it so they get something like that, because you want it. Now, that's not saying don't have them fight something that could give it to them, but to go out of your way to really try and focus on making that happen is not a very good way to GM. I know that now. Well, so anyway, even after all of this, they keep going. And they get down in this basement of this place they're going. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. And this is why I had the bestiary bookmarked. Now, the bottom of their thing was filled with devils and demons. And I read it, I Google searched it, but I came up with an entirely different thing. I typed in the name of the creature. It came back with a picture of a lemur. I actually had a lemur. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's a devil. What I was using was a lemur. A ring-tailed lemur. Far cry from what it was supposed to have been. But I didn't think anything of it because, they were demons and devils, and instead it kept it as a pet. Made perfect sense to me. Sure, why not? No. Always read your bestiary entry. At the top of every entry is a description. If I had read the description of the creature, I would have known I had the wrong thing. The description of a lemur. A rolling wave of flesh gushes forward amid the fatty surge, wriggle half-formed limbs and a dripping tumorous face. If I would have read that, that does not sound like a ringtail lemur to me. No. But I didn't know what I was doing. So, basically, that's my point. Read everything. Make sure you understand how the mechanics work of the creatures you use. Make sure you understand if there's a story point involved, that you're giving them the correct story point. Make sure you're throwing the right creature at them, especially if you're running a pre-written adventure, because I have yet to live down the whole Beamer and the Muir thing, and that's been 3 years ago. And also, don't try to purposely inflict things on your players just for the sake of inflicting them because you think it would be something cool. Again, not that you can't throw things at them where they have the chance of contracting it. That is perfectly fine. If I had done things differently this time around, I know I would have waited till maybe there wasn't another option or something, and then had them attempt to bite and go for the lycanthropy to turn them into were-rats and things like that. But I was going full bore, 100%. Wanted to turn them into these things, and I shouldn't have. Now, I guess that's kind of my tale today of how I really screwed up in my first attempt. That story did continue, by the way. But that was the first book of my first attempt at a GM. I got better in the second book. I didn't make as many silly mistakes. But that's my tale for today, really, is know what you have, know what you're running, and read more into what you're doing. There are books and things you can also use to help you. This is also one of them. It is done by Paizo. It is the Pathfinder Game Mastery Guide. It is full of very good information as far as how to run a successful campaign, how to successfully find things, and what you should and shouldn't do as a GM. Tons of good information. I have now read it. I wish I would have read it before I had started GMing. Live and learn, I guess. So, hopefully you've learned something from my tale, and the takeaway hopefully helps somebody else here not make the same mistakes I did. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and if there's anything you want me to cover, send me a video response. Drop me a line in a comment. I'm always looking for new ideas for videos, so if there's anything you really want to hear from me, let me know. I will cover it, or try to cover it if I can. Like I said, there's my tale. I am Lauger. Until next time.